Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti. And the pravachana will be done by Sachidanandam ji. So before handing over mic to Sachidanandam ji, I would like to introduce him to everyone, to the people from speakers panel and listeners panel. So Sachidanandam ji has roots in ecology as masters, has 2 decades of geographic information systems IT experience. He is currently residing in US with his family, and he has been drawn to Itihasas, Puranas, Upanishads, Gita from a very, very young age. This made him try many spiritual paths due to the internal atmic pressure. Always open to learn from any sampradaya, as a truth seeker, he tried to understand even the philosophies of other religions. This also opened his eyes to the pressures on today's Hinduism. A staunch proponent and a practitioner of Sanatan Dharma, he never hesitates to highlight its merit or defend it from hardline critics. He's currently running a very, very popular blog, Sachidanandamreflections.blogspot.com. You can find him in his profile. You can see the Twitter icon. If you click on the Twitter icon, there you will see the link in the Twitter bio. That blogspot focuses on explaining different aspects of Sanatan Dharma. Over 100 articles, many even widely republished in other places, with a strong emphasis on the practical application of Itihas Puranas. He also has English podcast on popular Tamil YouTube channel, R.S. Iddanai. At Clubhouse, his popular weekly discourses on Sanatan Arivom Club attracts wide and regular audience and can be listened on YouTube channel as well, with the same name, Sanatan Arivom. He periodically conducts a attended Sanatan Dharma Q&A English session to clarify the doubts of both the theists and critics alike. Shortly, he plans to commence regular English pravachanas for the larger audience. Together with others, he likes to unify the different sampradayas against the continuous onslaught of predatory forces like materialism, leftism, wokeism, and Abrahamic religion devious practices. So let's welcome Sachidanandam ji here on our panel. Today we'll be hearing Upanyas on Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti from him. Over to you, Sachidanandam ji. Namo Namaha.
Namaste, Nishant ji. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes. Yes, loud and clear. Swagatam. Yes. Swagatam.
Om. Today, we are going to talk about this interesting topic, Ichha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, Jnana Shakti. And we are all aware of these terms. We know Ichha Shakti refers to Shri or Mahalakshmi. Jnana Shakti refers to Saraswati, and Kriya Shakti refers to Parvati. And we are all aware that these 3 forces are very critical in unraveling anything we do in our life. Because if one is missing, the whole thing is not going to manifest. So what we are going to do is to take this next 30 minutes and compress this thought process from a Vedantic point of view, from a point of view of what we can understand already. So usually my typical style would be to start with a introduction, talk about a story, and then see what we can apply. Here we are going to do the exact opposite. We are going to first start with the things we understand and what we are familiar, and then gradually wade into a couple of stories and find the hidden meaning in these 2 stories. And I'll be very brief because this topic will not do justice in 30 minutes. I am quite aware of that. We will probably elaborate on this topic elsewhere at a different point in time. So for doing any action, we need a thought followed by the word and then followed by the action. Let's take the wondrous effort taken by Pravina ji and Nishant It started as Pravinaji's brainchild. She started talking to people. Hey, can you come and do this thing? What is the format we should do? How can we do this thing? So a thought started an idea, and then it started manifesting and expressing itself as a word. And here we are, enjoying the fruits of the action already. And we have such wondrous singers here. We have many stalwarts and jambawans here. And sometimes for entertainment value, they need to include someone. So I told maybe I'll fit that slot better. So I applied for that slot. And that's why I'm here today. So what actually happens when you have a thought? This is from a worldly perspective. We get a thought from two different perspectives. Either our vasanas that are buried deep within bubble up and pushes the mind to go in a certain direction, and that's how a thought is expressed. Or our senses are roaming around in the world of sense objects, and we get a thought planted from such an interaction. Nonetheless, this mechanism of either coming from within or without is the reason why you and I, we all get the thoughts. And then we also have the words. Words as what we call as jnanam, because shabda is also important for us to communicate, but it also is the representation of jnanam. It's also the word used to represent Vedas, right? So we need jnanam to make a certain thing happen. And eventually, we all express our actions. And we go into the world of objects and do a certain action. And such a action is going to, such a karma is going to create a ripple effect, and it is going to give us karma phala. This karma phala will come back again and sit back in ourselves as a vasana. It goes and alters the gunas, the way with which we see the world. If I wear yellow colored glasses, the whole world is going to look jaundiced to me. If I wear pink colored glasses, everything is going to be rosy. So the gunas are the glasses through which we are going to see the world. So how does this translate to a deeper topic is what we are going to see. Now, for any success in the world, we need thought, word, and action to be perfectly aligned. Now, if you align these three, we have so many definitions of yoga, and one of the definitions is to do this alignment. If you do this alignment, you can say you are established in yoga in a certain sense. Now, in the world around, in the Upanishads, even the Puranas, in the Itihasas, we see all these Asuric characters. They also do tapas. They also do sadhana. They also do everything. But what they do is they have understood the value of thought, word, and action, and they get that power. But there is a fourth important criteria in this. It is as important as the alignment, if not more. Now, we know that this thought, word, action alignment can happen in two different directions. In Kathopanishad, we call this as preyas and shreyas. In other words, if you take this alignment and go in the direction of satya, it becomes expressed as dharma. If you go and use this power that comes by this alignment and in the opposite direction, then it is called adharma. So once we understand that It is the same Ichcha Shakti, Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti that is there in the Asura. It is also there in the Sura. It is also there in the Rishi. It is also there in the Dumil. You will find there is no difference. So anyone who can connect their thought, word, action can manifest that result. Having said that, how do we align ourselves? Where is the source of this Shakti? That is what we need to see. Let us take an analogy. Now, we have so many rivers that are flowing into the ocean. If you ask a child, even 4th grade, 5th grade, they'll say, what are the different oceans? They will give you a big list of 4 or 5 oceans name they will tell. Tell me the names of the rivers, important rivers in the country or in the world. They will tell you that. But what we don't realize is that it is all part of the same water. So when I touch the water, whether it is the Ganga or the Kuvam, whether it is the Mississippi or the Volga, it is the same ocean I am touching. That Shakti you and I perceive as 3 different Shakti is because of our Rajas. But once we see past our Rajas and raise our Sattvic Guna, we can see that there is only one Shakti, there is only one water. So what we see as Ichcha Shakti, Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti is only for our perspective and our understanding, but it is the same Adi Shakti, Mahashakti, Parashakti that is behind everything. It is the same Brahman that is behind everything. Now we will get the doubt. Because we are in a day and age where doubt anything and everything is in fashion. We need proof. So let us look at Kenopanishad and look at this beautiful story that tells us what is the mystery behind. Now, as I told you, we are going to look at it very briefly for the lack of time, because each topic we can talk for hours and hours and hours. Because there is so many layers to this story that nobody will be able to do justice in such a short time. So there is this incident that happens. All the Devas are so proud that they have defeated all the Asuras, and each one was boasting about their own power. And they were telling, look how I burnt them, look how I smashed them, look how I did that. At that time, there is a huge form of a Yaksha that comes in a brilliant form. And this Yaksha appears according to the Kenopanishad, Yajana Yogya Yakshaha, a sacred being, a brilliant being, it appears. Now Devas saw that it didn't appear too far, because if it is too far, Devas would not have noticed. And it didn't come too close, because Devas would have figured out that something is different in this. So they wanted to find who is this. So they sent. Normally when they send, they won't send the number 1 person. They usually send the number 1 person in their mind who volunteers, right? So Agni volunteered. So Agni Bhagavan goes there and he looks at it and he says, who are you? He says, I am just an Yaksha. So he says, then the Yaksha asks, who are you? He says, I am Agni Jatavedas. I am the fire god. I can burn what do you do? I can burn anything. He says, like, really? You can burn anything? So the Yaksha put a small blade of dry grass and he said, now burn this. Agni said, what is this is a joke. I am Agni. I can burn the entire cosmos. What are you thinking? I will burn this. And he tried and tried and tried and nothing happened. So he said, I am sorry. So he goes back with his head hung. Then Vayu says, you know what? I understand that you are not that capable. You have to see my prowess. So he goes and he gets the same question, who are you? He says, I am Vayu. He said, what do you do? I can blow anything away. Really? So he puts the same piece of dry grass, one blade of dry grass, and he says, blow this. Vayu does all what he can, and guess what? Nothing happened. So then they went back to Indra and said, we don't know who this guy is. Indra thought, these are useless guys, like I need to go and do all these small things also myself. Now, again, I'm not literally translating Kenopanishad. Pardon my latitude here as a narrator. So Indra goes there, and when he goes, the Yaksha disappears. Now Indra is thinking, what the heck? Because these two guys at least saw this guy, had a conversation, and I am the king of Devas. I can't even see what is there. Now he suddenly realizes that his ahambhava, his ego, is the stumbling block. So once he realizes, he becomes humble, then a beautiful Devi appears. That Devi is Parvati, Uma. She is so beautiful that Indra is like, he can't even talk. He's just stunned by her beauty. We hear her beauty in Saundarya Lahari, right? She's so beautiful. And Indra is now confused. Where is that Yaksha? Who is that Yaksha? So Devi sees that Indra is humble now, so she starts telling him about, she accepts him as a Shishya and as her Shishya, and she gives all the knowledge how to understand that Yaksha. That Yaksha is none other than Parabrahman. Right? So now we heard this story. Let's dive very briefly into what this hidden meaning is. Like, there is a lot of meaning. Now we are going to just rush through. We are going to go as fast as the Yaksha appeared and disappeared, because we have to see one more small story. So the Yaksha represents the supreme Parabrahman. It doesn't have a shape or form, and it dazzles everyone, because we know that such a Yaksha exists. Why? We will see that in a minute. Agni represents the speech. We all say that, right? Agni is in the tongue, right? Then Vayu, what do you say Vayu? Vayu is our Pancha Prana, right? What we call as Pancha Prana. And what does Prana is tied to? The Manas. So Vayu represents here the mind. And our dear friend Indra represents, you can take either as the Jivatma or you can take it as the Ahamkara. Now what happens when the speech or the mind approaches the Parabrahman? It basically cannot understand. It says, I can't do anything without it. I don't know. It just raises its hands and it goes off. And then what happens is, our Jivatma approaches it with Ahamkara. When it approaches it with Ahamkara, it can't see anything. It has to first give up that Ahamkara. It didn't see the Yaksha, remember? And then when it humbled itself, that Saguna Brahman takes the form of a Devi and comes in the form of Uma. And it teaches us all the knowledge we need. And that Devi is nothing other than Sattva. She is Shuddha Sattva. That Devi cannot take you to that Brahman, but she will give you enough knowledge that you can raise yourself and approach that Nirguna Parabrahman. So the important thing is one has to transcend all these stages in their spiritual path. It is not necessary only to tap Icha Shakti, which is basically any desire we want to manifest, the Jnanam, what we want to understand and how to do the mechanics, and Kriya, the actual action. It is not enough. So, what do? We all know the three gunas, Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva, and we have to transcend even that Sattva guna. And once Indra understood this knowledge, he goes back and teaches Agni and Vayu. Who is that? That is speech and mind. So, in our culture, in our Sanatana Dharma, we have the high ideals that are being narrated to us in the form of stories, slokas, mantras, and speech is very, very, very important. And that is why anybody and everybody cannot start chanting mantras. You have to have proper guru to train you to tell the right way. In the same way, we also have a system, ecosystem to train our mind. Who is that mind? That mind has to be instructed by the Jivatma that is already elevated. And who represents that? All our acharyas. So the Indra that went in is not the Indra that came out after meeting Uma. And when Uma also disappears, the real nature of Yaksha is understood. Now we can wax a lot on this topic, but for the sake of brevity, let's quickly go to the next topic which I wanted to cover. We also know from Markandeya Purana, and we have Abhinavji who is taking each time one Devi and talking eloquently about it. We also have Vasudevaji singing about it. But we also want to go and see what are the three forms of the Devis. Navaratri, we all know, we have 3 days for Kali, Durga. We have 3 days for Mahalakshmi and 3 days for Mahasaraswati. And then on the 10th day, we have the Vijayadashami. Now, these 3 represent a spiritual path we all are traversing. Now, we have to connect it back to keep in context the 3 Shaktis what we have, because we have to internally keep mapping what we know, those 3 things, Icha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, but we have to map it to the wisdom that we are getting from all these Puranas. Now, in the Devi Mahatmya, we see Adi Shakti goes and wakens up Mahavishnu who is in Yoga Nidra. Why? It's not like we people are sleeping and somebody in the family says this fellow has been sleeping long, wake him up. Not like that. Because when Bhagavan was asleep in Yoga Nidra, 2 asuras, Matu and Kaitapa, they came from the 2 ears of Bhagavan. Now you have to understand, it is like the ear wax. Again, this is a metaphorical thing. Don't approach it like the Tamil Nadu Dumilitis way and say that they are talking bad about these people and that sort of thing. We have to understand what these metaphors refer to. Matu and Kaitapa are destroyed by Mahavishnu, but that is possible only because Adi Shakti wakens up. Second thing is, Mahalakshmi goes after Mahishasura and Raktabija, and Mahasaraswati destroys the Shumba and Nishumba. Now, what does this mean? Now, Matu and Kaitapa, I told you, there are 3 big obstacles along the path of spirituality. We all know this. Mala, Vikshepa and Avarana. And we see how these stories, although they have happened in a cosmological angle, although they have happened in all those places, for every sadhaka who is going through that journey, they will feel the same process because everything is cyclical. So we will feel the same cycle happen in us. So Madhu and Kaitapa, the two Rakshasas who came out, they wanted to steal the Vedas, and because they understood Brahma is able to do all his creation only because of Vedas. And if we steal that, Brahma becomes useless. So we can control this universe. That was their plan. So what happened? The Mala, what we say, is of the lowest form. Bhagavan Krishna says, Kama yesha krodha yesha rajoguna samudbhava. Kama krodhasta lobha tasmat yetat trayam tyajet. Krishna says, Kama and Krodha, just like Madhu and Kaitapa, are two malas. Give them up. In the second part of the sloka, he says that Kama, Krodha and Lobha, that is extreme attachment to desire and desire together. What is desire? I plus I want. Right? That is attachment. A desire cannot be separated from the attachment. You can't desire something and say I don't want it. So that is why we say Kama. Then we say if you don't get it, it becomes Krodha. And then if you keep getting more and you want more and more and more, that becomes Lobha. So Bhagavan Krishna says the same three things. And here also we see in the Devi Mahatmya the same two malas. And if somebody wants to progress in that spiritual path, unless they get rid of this mala, there is absolutely no progress possible. And it is Mahakali who out of kindness helps us. This may sound like a tantric way of looking, and that is why you will see Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was so attached to Ma Kali, because he didn't see her in the Gora form. She saw as one mother who lovingly takes care of her child by taking care of all the small problems that arise in the child. So we understand that this Madhu and Kaitapa are our two Kama and Krodha, the Mala what we have in us. And once we want to remove the Mala, you think it's going to be easy? No. I will give you another example. There is a wonderful lake and you want to see your face. But when you go and put your face, it is crystal clear water, it will show your face. But in that water, what has happened is there is a storm that is passing through. So it is very choppy. And it is also having a lot of mud. So what this Mala represents is our that muddiness, that tamas in us. Unless we get over that tamas, unless we get over that Mala, we cannot even dream of understanding that Paramatma. Then we come to this next two set of characters, Mahishasura and Raktabija. All of you are aware of the wonderful story in Devi Mahatmya. Mahishasura keeps taking different forms. He comes as a buffalo, comes as an elephant, he keeps changing the form all the time. And we also have Raktabija. What Raktabija does is, every time you cut his head off, as many drops of blood has fallen, that many Raktabijas will come. Non-stop these Raktabijas are coming, And no matter how much you do, this Vikshepa Shakti is coming again and again and again. So, the only one way to do that, so Ma Kali put her tongue out and draped this entire earth. So, whenever any drop of blood would fall, it will fall only on her tongue and Rakta Bija would not sprout. What does this mean? It means our desires. Is there a limit to our desire? Can we put a limit to this desire? You can count the stars, you can count the grains of sand on earth, but you will not be able to count the number of desires that we are capable of producing. Trust me on that one. I've been that path very far. So what happens? This Rakta Bija of our desire keeps sprouting again and again and again. So how do we overcome these two? See, the first two people, it was possible for to Shakti to annihilate them. But here, the Vikshepa Shakti is very, very powerful. So how do we translate it in our life? If you do Nishkamya Karma, you can get over this Mala. And if you do Upasana, you can get over this Vikshepa. Now, if these two things are taken out, then just like a glass, plain glass is there, you can see what is inside that. Very easily you can see what is inside. Now comes the third problem, third obstacle we have. It is called Ajnana. It's called Avarana. It's called Avidya. And what happens is, this Avidya causes confusion, delusion in our mind. And that is also a Lakshana of Sattva-guna. So if we see all the Shastras, they say you have to become Gunatita. You have to cross all the boundaries. If you want to have moksha, in any sampradaya you are following, whether it is bhakti, jnana, or whether it is advaita, dvaita, or whether it is any of the methodologies, you have to understand that sattva guna also has to be overcome. We will talk about gunas at some other time, but let me come close to this talk, because we are running out of time. The most important thing we need to understand is these three, Mala, Vikshepa and Avarana, are part of our every sadhaka's life. Now, what is the thing connecting to the topic? Now, we have this energy source. You have nuclear energy. Now, you can drop it on like they dropped on Japan. Or you can also tap it for some productive purpose, like nuclear energy, you can tap it. Now, instead of using an atom bomb in a negative way or positive way, what determines that? It is the direction that determines that. Are you going in the direction of prayers, the path of pleasure, or are you going in the path of shreyas, which is the path of ultimate good? So every sadhaka has to understand this is the difference between an asura and a sadhaka. The asura also understands the power of Ichcha Shakti, Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti. In fact, they understand and implement way more than you and I. Take the amount of Hindu phobia that is around. Look at the red light media. Look at the forces that are inimical. How they consistently have a plan, they have a toolkit, they spread the message, they put it in action. What do Hindus do? Sing bhajan, collect sundal. What we need to understand is that dharma has to be protected. Dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. We are all now empowered with that extra level knowledge, that what asuras will not aspire for, because the asuric mind goes only in the form of artha and kama. But we are bit better. We are after dharma and moksha. So imagine there are two slot machines. In that slot machine you can have two coins. In that one coin is dharma and artha. Dharma and moksha. In the other slot machine you have kama and artha. And kama and artha is our materialistic life. You keep putting in that kama artha, that is the path of prayers. You keep going along this path of prayers long enough. You may like laddu, eat laddu daily, 5 laddus every day for the next 6 months. Guarantee you will get diabetes, blood pressure, all the diseases in the medical dictionary. So it may be tasty that Ichcha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti may materialize, but is that good in the long run? That is the question we have to ask as sadhakas. And then you have the other coin which you can use. You take dharma, and in that dharma, Sita says to Rama in the forest, so dharma, from dharma only emanates artha, from dharma only emanates kama, from dharma only emanates sukham, and that sukham is lasting sukham, that is not a temporary pleasure that spikes and goes out. So if you take dharma, it contains in itself artha and it also contains in itself kama. Now on the other side of it, you see moksha. So you use this coin which contains dharma, artha, kama, moksha, all the purusharthas. Then you will be able to manifest Ichcha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti to the maximum, because you also have raised your sattvic guna and you can understand that it is the same Shakti that is not split differently, that you have to master 3 different things. It is the same Shakti that manifests itself as 3 different things or 15 different things or 100 different things. So once we understand that secret, we are all obligated to have one responsibility, that we all will do our part for dharma samrakshana. It is our duty to protect this, to pass on this wisdom to the next generation, and may the Devis bless each and every one of us in that endeavor, in that journey. May she guide us in destroying the Mala, Vikshepa and Avarna. May she help us overcome our tamas with our rajas and with sattva. And eventually let us overcome that sattva also. Just like how Indra, when he humbled his ego, Devi showed everything what he needs to know about that Parabrahman. She will also guide us, each and every one of us. So in between, we may have to take care of not only the internal Rakta Bijas, we also have to encounter the external Rakta Bijas who are after destroying this Sanatana Dharma. So may Devi's grace be upon all of us. Thank you, Praveena ji, for this wonderful opportunity. I just thought these are a few thoughts I could share at this point about Ichcha Shakti, Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti. Jai Shri Ram.